Hello, I'm joined here by Richard Corbett.
Hi, Jonah.
Richard, thanks for joining.
Thank you.
This is a little High Desert Human Design 2023 Remote Access Pass behind the scenes.
Lots going on behind the scenes, that is for sure.
And Richard has been immensely helpful. Last night we counted up all the tote bags.
They look awesome.
Yeah, we got the
think
tote
everybody's
bags.
gonna like
Yeah,
them.
we've been just hard at work. Wow, it's been a journey coming to where we are now.
I've been amazed at how much has been happening. It's really exciting. And thank you, Jonah. You have put in so much effort. It just seems like it's around the clock. So
Well, thank you.
I can feel the momentum building on this end out here.
Oh, yeah. No, we've been, I mean, you've been a part of it as well. And just seeing how the schedule has evolved. We just added your third workshop and your fourth workshop and your fifth total event. You have a main stage talk and 4 workshops. So
Wow,
MVP,
put me to work.
MVP at the conference here. And so really nice having you do all that, and of course helping out on all the behind the scenes stuff. So the reason I wanted to do this little video is for people on the Remote Access Pass, just to get a better idea about your workshops, your talk, you, just kind of get to know you, a little getting to know you thing. How long have you been in human design now?
I got my first reading in 1999. And my teacher, Ed Stanton, I just started studying with him right away. I was just like, oh my goodness, I got to know more. So I got certified with HDHD in 2001 and been going at it ever since. It's been a while.
Fantastic.
Feels like a long time ago when I
Yeah.
frame it like that, but it has been.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. And you've lived around Santa Fe, or now you're up in Budo, of course. But,
I've been around here like 25 years.
Yeah, northern New Mexico.
Yeah, I just love it. I'm so excited everybody's coming out to check it out again.
It's a pretty magical place here.
It is.
I mean, I never want to leave. As soon as I came here, I knew it was home.
That's how I was.
So.
I literally came for a weekend and went home on Monday, quit my job, and drove back. That's how I got here.
Yeah, we both have that defined G, Not to say that the undefined G can't have that instant recognition of where they're comfortable or what's right for them, but wow, defined G, we know what we like. And when we like something, we like it.
Yeah.
We're pretty much there. We kind of have this, homing missile of, we're just going right to where we want to be, and we don't want to leave. So
that's a good way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, it's the first place I've lived where I actually, when I'm traveling, I can't wait to get back.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
I know, and I love that.
Usually I'm traveling and I'm kind of like, oh, my vacation's over, and since I've lived here, it's, I can't wait to get my favorite food and see all my favorite people.
100%.
Yeah.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. Well, so let's talk a little bit about at the conference. Now, so something interesting about you is that you've started in human design, and then you didn't know any astrology when you got into human design.
Nothing. Never had even had an astrology reading.
Right, and which is kind of rare. I mean, a lot of people hear about human design, they already have a foundation in astrology. So, and then later you learned astrology.
Yeah.
Which I just think is so cool to come at it.
Right.
You're one of 8 people in the world who learned human design before.
Right.
I haven't even met the other 7. You might be the only one.
Right.
I don't know.
It is kind of strange. I just had not been exposed to it at the time, and so I only studied. Well, what I did was when I first was into human design, of course, studying everything that we all do there, and then I kind of was led into the I Ching. So I spent a lot of time with the original I Ching. Mm-hmm. But it was actually a series of transits where that got me interested in astrology. And I'll talk about this more in my talk with slides and all. But I went through a really difficult time during my roof stage. So my Uranus opposition was really challenging. And I think everybody's experience is unique, of course, including with these major life transits that I spend a lot of time working on now. So I think it varies tremendously person to person. Mine was particularly bad. And so I was looking at my human design chart and my Uranus opposition while I was going through this really challenging, like the worst of my life situation. And I couldn't get what I was looking for. I couldn't quite understand from the gates and the channels and the planets that were in there. I'm like, I was still hurting and I wasn't getting what I was looking for there. And again, this is, before the internet and social media, and we have such resources now with each other. I didn't have a community to share on that as much. Ed, my teacher, had moved away. So all that to say, a friend of mine was like, you should go try this astrology guy. Go talk to him, see what he says. And I went, and he looked at my chart and my transit and explained every single thing that was happening to me. And I was like, why didn't I see some of this in my body graph? And that's when I started learning about aspects. And we don't take in, now the wheel, the mandala, the aspects, astrology is built into it. It's all in there. It's baked in. But we don't look at certain pieces of it more closely, independently.
Yeah, we're not looking for squares or triangles.
Right.
We're not that's not part of the human design system, really. I mean, we look at the planetary activations, and some of them happen to be oppositions, 3740 or 3420, but that's kind of a coincidental or a secondary facet. It's not what we're really looking at.
Exactly. And I think we can certainly say that in the Rave Mandala, all these aspects are already built into it due to the positioning of the gates. It's like it's in there, but it's not obvious. Okay, so that's what got me going. So I got the reading, and that's once I heard that and I started studying astrology, it just brought a lot more depth. I think it's just a lot like when you look at a gate and then you learn the lines. Okay, you're going to the next level, right? As we go down the hexagram. And that's kind of what we can do when we look at the aspects of the planets.
Yeah, and there's a really good point as well made by the archetypal astrologer Richard Tarnas, where he wrote this incredible book, Cosmos and Psyche, and he doesn't use houses, he doesn't look at the ascendant, he doesn't look at even any planet, he doesn't look at any of the personal planets, he only looks at Jupiter and beyond, so Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and that's all he looks at, and he tells this incredible story only based on the synodic cycles of those planets and the aspects they make to each other. Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, Jupiter-Uranus square. The conjunction was, there was one at my birth, or Uranus-Pluto conjunction in the 1960s. Yeah. And then the square around 2014 and things that happened then. And so only looking at aspects. And so somebody asked him, and they said, well, you seem to be ignoring vast parts of astrology, and you're ignoring like houses, you're ignoring all these things. I mean, do you look at decans, which is like the divisions of the gates? And his reply was great. He said, basically, if you spend enough time with any, like he used the example of the Germans who did astrobiology, and they also worked on midpoints, and they did a whole system in the 1920s, completely fresh take on astrology. And it was all based on midpoints. And so all they would look at is midpoints. Richard Tarnas has never looked at midpoints once in any of his work. But he said, look, the reason they are able to have valuable information is because they devoted 10, 15, 20 years to studying this. And they were able to discern formulas and patterns within it and to be able to apply that knowledge. So they were able to come up with theory and then application. And what he basically said was a great answer. He just said, it's naive to imagine that one person would include everything, or that one area of study is lacking because it excludes another area of study, because that's not how areas of study work. When we're doing these metaphysical research programs, what we're really doing is undertaking the burden of learning a very particular vocabulary and system and set of formulas. And so human design is not lacking because it excludes astrology. Neither is astrology lacking because it excludes human design. Neither is astrology just one thing, because obviously when you're studying the aspects, and these Germans in the 1920s are studying midpoints, they're not looking at aspects. I mean, they're looking at aspects between midpoints, or all these different things. So it's really, I guess my point is just the things that we study, they start to become salient. They start to stand out. We start to see how they could be useful or not, and some are more useful than others. It's kind of like the question of like classical astrology versus more contemporary interpretations. What are these for? Versus human design. I mean, these are all different approaches, and obviously we want to not conflate the systems, which you've done a great job of. I mean, you're calling your talk, two systems, human design and astrology. It's kind of like we're looking at, but I mean, at the same time, I mean, these two systems are both analyzing the planets. They're both, so Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of
Well, and
interesting.
that's what I love
Yeah.
about this conference. I can't wait. Everybody is drawn to their own particular area of interest, right? And we're going to get to see that showcased in some incredibly dynamic ways. And that's what I love. So, like you're sharing, it's like I was just drawn to this particular element outside of human design that has been really beneficial in my work. And I think that's
Yeah.
everyone kind of finds their area that
Well, and it sounds like for you, it wasn't academic; it was deeply personal.
it was.
You know, you're going through something personal, and that's why you were drawn into it. You weren't drawn into it out of academic curiosity. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Plenty of people out there are meant to kind of have that curiosity and want to see what else is out there. But it seems to me that what you were doing is you were looking at your Uranus opposition chart.
Mhm.
You're on the roof. You're a 6-2. You're on the roof, and you're going, okay, this Uranus opposition chart, sure, it's telling me a theme that maybe I can see unfold in my life. I mean, typically you would actually look at it maybe 3.5 years after the exact
Mhm.
to kind of see how that theme has played out. But it's not telling you what you're going through in
Right.
that Uranus
Right.
opposition.
And that's the other thing, too. Astrology does have so much language. We have thousands of years of a language that's developed. And I think that, again, helps us go deeper just to reflect on these keynotes in human design. You know, Rod did an amazing job. As Genoa likes to say, that he calls keynotes chemical triggers of self-reflection. And I think that's really beautiful.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah, there's this structuring that Ra did where he kind of chose the language he chose for the maximum impact
Right.
and to continue to kind of be gifts that keep on giving and that keep working as we deconstruct and unpack them in
Right.
different ways.
And so there are, in that sense, verbal portals that we can use as a tool to integrate this information. But then with astrology, when we go into the mythology, you know, even of just the planets even, this does bring such another level of depth, I think, and the vibrational quality. And it's so that, you know, in astrology, we call these aspects harmonics. And it is more like music than anything. And that's how for me, astrology is music. I hear a sound, right?
Mhm.
Whereas human design to me is form, it's structure. It brings it into the body.
That's a really good point. Is that that we are kind of it's frequency and it's the relationship of frequency. So really, it is what Pythagoras called the harmony of the spheres, and this harmony of the spheres could be seen. Right, we have the harmonic gates in human design, but there's also harmonic and inharmonic aspects, or however we want to look at that. We also have harmonic lines, for instance, line 1 and 4, 2 and 5, 3 and 6. So we already kind of use this language of frequency.
Right.
Carl Jung had a great term that he coined or that he used in a new way, which is amplification. Now, we talk about amplifying in human design. The open center amplifies to the point of distortion, and it's kind of a negative connotation of the not self, that it's not, at least if it amplifies too much. But there's another meaning of the term, and Carl Jung used the term amplification to basically say when we have some inscrutable or something we can't understand, a dream, something ineffable, we're presented with a situation we can't make sense of, and maybe we're even having difficulty integrating that into our understanding of ourselves. Like you're going through this, Uranus opposition, you're having these experiences where you don't necessarily have the language to put into words even what you're experiencing. And what Jung said is needed in these situations is amplification through mythological connections. And so what you do is you take a dream image or you take a subjective experience or a feeling you're getting, and you start to connect that to different images. And he said, actually, we don't heal from the darkness with images of light. It's only with more images of darkness. If you're in a dark mood, you can amplify through understanding the connection of that dark mood to classic tragedies. Tristan and Isolde, a great tragedy. You're going through a great heartbreak. You listen to this heartbreaking opera or hear a heartbreaking story that amplifies your experience and allows you to help process and move through that experience and actually feel it deeper.
Yes.
Where if you're trying to heal it with images of light, it's kind of like eating junk food, or you're trying to heal tragedy with comedy. It doesn't quite work.
Yes. Very well said. That was just beautiful. I think that's exactly what's possible. That's what I went through without knowing it, and that's what I work with now.
Yeah, having the astrological archetypes actually it helps add words to our, vocabularies, where if we're trying to describe something and we're saying, I'm having a hard time. Okay, but I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
Having a hard time, but I'm doing fine. It's like hard and fine. These are not descriptive terms. But when you talk about the difference between a difficult time with Neptune, and you might say, well, I've been falling into a pool of melancholy where I just retreat into the ocean of the womb, and I've been having these kind of, you can use terms like escapism, but you can also describe it as the oceanic feeling. That was a term from Freud or something, and then that's so difficult so different than a difficult time you would have with Saturn, where you say, well, I'm just feeling confined. It's like I'm in prison, and every day I'm being pressed down and face to face with a stark reality. It's like having a cold shower or cold water dumped in my head. There's a bitterness that's emerged. Even the sensory aspects of it, the flavors, the smells, the visual aspects.
As you mentioned, the mythological story behind it. Where did it come from?
That as well, yeah. And to be able to talk about Saturnine stories versus Neptunian stories, or I'm having a really difficult Uranian time. Things keep changing, and I'm getting shocked all the time. And there's this kind of, electric shock energy in the air where I feel like I'm hooked up to a cattle prod, and every turn I make. And these are all very different kinds of experiences, and yet we might just say, I'm having a hard time, but I'm doing fine.
Yeah.
And there's a sort of a blanket erasure of the differences between all of these different archetypal experiences that we could be going through.
Yes, 100%. And also beyond that, and this kind of ties back to your comment about Richard Tarnas and his work, looking at the outer planets, they set up a scaffolding for our whole life. And it's very much like nature, and that's another reason I love it, is that astrology helps connect us to nature and the seasons. It originally was kind of like a farmer's almanac. And we can see that in these outer planets, because they're so slow moving, they control large segments of periods of our life. And then all the other planets ping off of that, right? But they kind of set the scaffolding. And so I found that very helpful to be able to see, what season is going on here. There are seasons of growth, there are seasons of reflection. There's a time and place for everything.
We have the phases we look at in human design of the Saturn return, Uranus opposition, and then the Chiron return. And that does create this, there's a tripartite life process where the middle part is bifurcated between the pre-Uranus and the post-Uranus. Yeah. And it is this interesting way of looking at it. But then you can also, like as you're saying, these longer transits really do color such an important, there's just, that's what's so funny is that we can really think we've changed, and if we're not aware of the transit, we just think that's the permanent new state of affairs. So it's like, my whole life I've always had problems with, fill in the blanks, someone who's non-sacral, and then they say, I haven't really been able to get a lot of stuff done, and then all of a sudden they have their sacral defined by Pluto for 3 years or something, right? And then they can do all this stuff, and I finally changed, I've solved it. And if you don't know that you're amplifying that Pluto energy, that's going to be, you're in for a real, awakening when that energy goes away. Or someone like myself with an undefined throat, getting a long-term throat transit, oh my word, I've always had difficulties in this area. I finally changed, I finally matured, and then that transit stops, and you're just right back where you were. And you kind of go, okay, life, I guess I didn't change in the way that I thought I did.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. No, I love looking at the transits. I still do. There's different, it's kind of like the Tarot or other systems for me, where I'll go through phases of spending a lot of time where I'm actually getting a lot of value from them. And I think the real question I always have, because people like to ask, well, is it a value? Do you need this if you're doing that? These are such blanket generalizations. The real question is, are you at a place of being stuck? If you are, then there's a need for some development to occur. Exactly. Yeah. And that development can occur through many avenues, whether it's journaling or painting or music or a relationship or anything. Travel can be that development. You don't need any particular modality to get to the next phase of life. But what all development has in common is that it starts on the design side. It starts on the unconscious, that while we're walking, the design is building our steps 3 months in advance. The design is making the steps appear that we're about to step on. So we're stepping and we're in midair. And as our foot is taking the next step, the design is building it and putting that there for us to step on.
That's awesome.
And so it's 88 degrees before, which doesn't mean it's old. Well, it's older than us, but what it really means is that it's also newer than us in the sense that it's more futuristic. It's it's one of those funny things. Like 88 degrees before does mean that it came around before us. So in that sense, it's older than us. But there's another sense that it's fresher or newer, because if you reverse it and you see it as 88 degrees in the future from us, that it's always 88 degrees ahead in a different sense. It's like it's starting first, so it's ahead of us.
Right.
So we like to think of it as, behind us, but actually it's future pacing us. It's running out in front of us, bringing us the next steps in life. And so that's the real value to me of when I look at any modality that engages with the unconscious or the design. I'm always looking at, is the person stuck, and is this helping get them unstuck? Or are things moving along and they're kind of preoccupied with this, which is actually making them stuck? There's a real difference there, right?
Yeah, and also that's so beautifully said. And then to also think about that 88 degrees. Now, a square aspect in astrology is 90 degrees. And so 88 is pretty close.
2-degree orb. Yeah.
This is the most dynamic, energetic aspect there is. So just to think about that, between our personality and our design, it is built for dynamic
it's
change.
built to have, right.
This getting stuck is how squares work. We're coming to an intersection here, and something is challenged.
And it builds up, and then something has to happen. Something has to resolve it. There's a real pressure to resolve it, unlike a trine, which never really gets. It's not having that tension. It's kind of like the cross of tension. Someone hears about the cross of tension and they go, I don't like the sound of this. We need tension. Things don't get done unless there's tension. It's like, why are there deadlines? Well, you might miss the deadline, but at least the fact you had it in the first place gets you moving.
And if we look at the channel of mutation, the 60 and the 3, that is a square. Those two gates are exactly square, and that's the most mutative, creative channel format setting for individual empowerment. I mean, that too speaks to the power of these relationships.
Oh, that's a really great point. Yeah, and I had realized that they were in the. I guess I realized that they were square, but I never really thought of it as the square relating to, their actual relationship to each other as kind of, limitation and then chaos at the beginning and sort of the new beginnings, and how there is this adversarial relationship that nevertheless, it actually reminds me, there's a great Slovenian philosopher, Slavoj Žižek, and he's a real Hegelian, and he loves Hegel because Hegel really fights against the idea of symmetrical relationships and of a sort of imaginary Garden of Eden unity between things. And what Hegel basically says is that's not how nature works. Exactly. And so there's actually a great quote from Hegel, because he didn't really believe in Eden. He said, the fall constitutes what was fallen from. So the fall from grace out of the Garden of Eden creates the image of Eden as a retroactive illusion of the harmony that existed before. Yeah. And the way Žižek puts it is, he says, we like to imagine certain peoples living in harmony with the world, and we like to imagine that we ourselves could live in harmony with the world. But actually, all of nature operates through some sort of, I think the term he uses is like metastatic antagonism or something. He has some really interesting term where he basically says it's antagonistic. And like a good example would be the acid level versus the pH, or the pH balance, the kind of base versus acid, or alkaline versus acid in the water. There's too much acid, and then there's a bunch of creatures of life that adapt to consume that and put out alkaline. Yeah.
I love that. We can take that right to gate 6, which controls the pH and the channel of mating. Yeah. The tagline for gate 6, the fundamental design component of progress, the law that growth does not exist without friction. From the moment of conception.
There you go. That
from
friction,
the moment of conception.
And then we can see that friction as antagonistic or competitive. We can also see it as cooperative. I mean, the way that it's kind of, people can be squeamish about the idea of these antagonisms, but actually it's friction. It's growth. How life works.
It's growth. And there again, back to astrology, a lot of this pop astrology, everyone's afraid of hard aspects, squares, oppositions, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, it's that. But that's where the juice is. That's
Yeah.
where the mutation is. And so it's integrating all of the music. It's just how and when with our authority.
Hmm. We both have Cancer Sun
Mm-hmm.
design, and it's
Yeah.
always funny to me. I had a lot of Cancer friends, and it was like, well, we're square because I knew astrology before coming to human design, and it's like, but we get along, we understand each other, we're cardinal, and yeah, we have some friction, but and it's kind of like they're the embodiment of my design, so now it kind of makes sense in a way. Something I really like to look at as well, and something I noticed some years back is you can take a 2-4 profile, or I mean, you can take any profile, but just take a 2-4 for instance, and their fourth line, their design sun, is going to be the personality sun of a 4-6 or a 4-1.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You take that 4-6, their design sixth line is going to be the personality sixth line of somebody else, and you can kind of play this game with your friends where you might be surprised to discover a 2-4, and then their exact fourth line is the personality sun of a 4-6, right? And their exact sixth line is the personality sun of a 6-2, and their exact design, right? And that 6-2, your second line is the personality line of a 2-4 or a 2-5.
Right.
So playing this game of kind of connecting the dots of your friend group and going, oh my word, I totally can see how Jane's unconscious is the same as Jim's conscious, and how if Jane wanted to really meet her own unconscious, obviously there's many other differences in the chart, but if she wanted to kind of meet the part of herself that she doesn't really see usually, or has to kind of, I always say that we find out about the unconscious at the same time that everyone else does. Ra had a completely unconscious mind, so he got to discover what he knew the same time everyone else finds out what he knew. You all kind of share in that. But then you get to see someone where it's conscious for them, and it's kind of like, this is what your unconscious would be like embodied in somebody else's personality.
Yeah, and you can sort of taste that vibration. Yeah, that's cool to look at.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. Well, this has been a wonderful chat. I cannot wait for your talks and your workshops. I mean, they've been filling up quick. We just added, we have 3 workshops where it's kind of hands-on chart analysis. Then we have the solar plexus panel, which is really exciting, and then of course the talk on the main stage. So excited.
Me too. Thank you so much. And again, all these efforts, I just want to share that with the listeners, that there is so much happening here. I mean, the amount
you've been helping. You just helped me clear out this whole room.
It's so fun to be part of.
Yeah, this room that we're in right now is actually one of the rooms we're going to have some of the talks. And Richard just helped me move a bed and move a bunch of tables.
We're transforming.
It really is. So, all right. Well, thank you for being on.
Thank you, Jonah.
Really appreciate it.